Okay. Merhaba değerli katılımcılar. Bir Profen Teknoloji Günlerinde yine sizlerle buluştuğumuz için mutluyuz. Ben Saadettin Avcılar. Profen'de yurt dışı tedarikçi ilişkileri görevini yürütüyorum. 3 senedir yapılmakta olan Profen Teknoloji Günlerinde, Profen iletişim bünyesinde bulunan teknolojileri ve tedarikçilerimizin teknolojilerini katılımcılarımız ile paylaşarak ortak çalışma zemini bulmayı amaçlıyoruz. Bugünkü konuğumuz MediaKind firması ile medya akış hizmetleri ve medya teknolojisi çözümleri ile ilgili bir oturum gerçekleştireceğiz. Oturumu MediaKind firmasından Paul O'Donovan ve Luke Williams birlikte sunacak. Ben önce bir iki kelime Profen'den bahsetmek istiyorum. Profen 27 yılı aşkın süredir haberleşme teknolojileri, savunma teknolojileri, teleport ve uydu hizmetleri, medya ve yayıncılık, EPC, yaşam bilimleri sektörlerine ürün ve hizmet sunan global bir şirkettir. Merkezi İstanbul'da bulunan Profen, Ankara, Konya ve yurt dışında Bakü ve İngiltere ofisleri ile dünya çapında yenilikçi ve yüksek uydu haberleşme teknoloji çözümleri sunmaktadır. Profen bünyesinde barındırdığı farklı grup şirketleri Profen İletişim Teknolojileri, Profen Savunma Teknolojileri, Profen Uydu Hizmetleri, Profen İnşaat, Profen UK ve Profen Yaşam Bilimleri ile ticari ürünlerden askeri projelere uzanan geniş bir sektör yelpazesinde uzmanlık ve bilgi sahibidir. Gerek yerel, gerekse uluslararası uydu trafiği için servis veren Konya Teleportu'na da ev sahipliği yapan uydu servisleri bölümü de grubumuz bünyesinde yer almaktadır. Bu sunumumuz İngilizce olacaktır. Kısa İngilizce açıklama sonrasında sözü önce MediaKind firmasından Paul O'Donovan'a vermek istiyorum. Dear participants, we are pleased to see you again in Profen Tech Days. I'm Saadettin Avcılar. I'm in charge of overseas supplier relations. We hope that by sharing technologies from our suppliers at the Profen Tech Days, which have been around for 3 years, we'll find common ground with the ecosystem. We are going to have a session with our guest, MediaKind, to discuss streaming services and media technology solutions. Luke Williams and Paul O'Donovan of MediaKind will present the session. Hello, Luke. Welcome to our webinar. It's over to you. Please tell our audience about MediaKind and present Paul about his presentation.
Thank you, Saadettin, and thank you, Profen, for inviting us for this session today. So my name is Luke Williams. I'm the Sales Director for Middle East and Africa, based in Dubai, and I'm happy to be here today sharing the floor with my colleague, Paul O'Donovan. Paul, would you like to give a short introduction?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Luke. My name is Paul O'Donovan. I'm normally based out of Cambridge in the United Kingdom, but I'm actually joining you today from Madrid in Spain, where I'm attending a very exciting event, Sports Pro, which is one of the leading sports events of the year, of the calendar, which brings together technology companies, sports leagues from around the world to discuss streaming services and direct-to-consumer services. So actually very relevant for what we'll be discussing today around how MediaKind can help enable content owners to launch direct-to-consumer streaming services.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul. And after Paul's, I will also be providing a presentation on why does my broadcast head end need to evolve. So we'll be looking into some of the key upgrades and future requirements for the ever evolving head end and why we need to adapt and change. So just prior to that, I'm just going to give a brief introduction on MediaKind, and then I'm going to head straight over to hand over to Paul, who will take you through the first part of the presentation. So MediaKind is the brand new brand and identity for Ericsson Media Solutions. We launched in 2018, inheriting 25 plus years of experience in the media processing, media delivery, and TV platform and streaming solutions game. And we became #1 in IPTV and media delivery. So today, MediaKind delivers over 40 million live streams to viewers across 120 countries. All the technology is built with open standards on infrastructure agnostic platforms to deliver cost-efficient, high-quality, compelling content to users. So MediaKind manages a glass-to-glass solution, so meaning everything from the camera content on the football pitch watching the live event, all the way through the network to the multi-screen devices in the home, which provides a full end-to-end delivery of content. So before I do that, I'll just hand over now to Paul, and I'll come back to you in about 30 minutes to take you through the second part. Over to you, Paul.
Thanks, Luke. So the topic of this session is, what does it take for content owners to create an end-to-end direct-to-consumer streaming application? This is a really hot topic at the moment for so many reasons. We've seen the market really shift over the last 5 to 10 years from all of the content being very often with the pay TV operators or with the broadcasters. And we've seen that shift in the market towards streaming services with the likes of Netflix, Disney, Hulu being, the big companies who started in this space and have really brought a lot of that content into their ecosystems. But we're also now seeing this on a much bigger scale with sports. The likes of the NBA in the US that I'll touch on later now have their own streaming service. They're taking the power away from the broadcasters and taking it back for themselves, so they can get the extra monetization and engagement that comes with that. And we're seeing a lot with with content owners as well, who have maybe relatively niche content, but it still is very valuable. If you can get 50,000 people globally willing to pay €10 a month for your service, that's a very good revenue stream. So increasingly we're seeing more and more content owners, sports leagues, broadcasters want to launch their own direct-to-consumer services, and that's something that we can help out with. So what are the challenges that our customers face when they see this? And I think what's lovely, as I mentioned, I'm at this Sports Pro event in Madrid. I attended a large number of panel sessions yesterday, and it was almost as if someone had written this slide for me when it comes to the challenges, because I heard the same challenges time after time yesterday from sports leagues and from other technology owners when it comes to the messaging around this. So the first big challenge is around scalability and growing your platform with your audience. And that can mean two things. It could mean, initially, even if you have aspirations to have 1 million subscribers in a year or 2 years' time, on day one, you don't have 1 million subscribers. On day one, you maybe have 10,000 or 50,000, or, if you're a well-established brand already and you can market really well, maybe 100,000. But if you don't have that huge number of subs from day one, but you've built your platform to deal with that, you have the costs associated with that, which means that it can be very cost inefficient or have a very high stand-up cost, which can be a huge risk. Also with scalability, it can be peak loads. So if we look at sports, for example, let's take football as an example. If you're a football league who wants to do streaming of the games that are on a Saturday afternoon, well, on a Saturday afternoon, you need to have the capacity to deal with 10 games, maybe taking place at the same time, and lots of subscribers on the platform. Outside of that, the rest of the week, you don't need that capacity. So you need to be able to scale up and scale down your platform to cope with that. Quality of experience is a huge thing, and that can mean a couple of things. First of all, it's reliability. So if we look at the challenges on reliability, you go back 5 years with OTT and people were relatively forgiving. So if you press the play button, and your video didn't start, and it's sort of, an error message, please try again later, people would go, oh, okay, it's a bit annoying, but this is new. Today, if people press the play button and the video doesn't start, they're angry. They're on social media. They're telling all their friends how awful your service is. So you need to now offer the same quality of experience that people expect from pay TV operators. And that also ties back into the scale side. We've seen this with many of the sports leagues in the US who've launched services in the last year or so, where they've had outages, where they've had problems because their scalability didn't match the quality of experience that was required. Luke's going to touch a little bit more on this later on, but also it comes down to video quality. Interestingly, OTT services now lead quality of experience when it comes to video quality in many cases. They're leading the charge with 4K, HDR, low latency content. So you need to make sure that the quality matches what your consumers are expecting. You need to be able to monetize your content, very obviously. That could be via a free ad-supported service. That could be via transactional services, via subscription services. So you need to make sure you have the flexibility to have the different offerings there. Time to market. Generally, the closer you are to a sports league, time to market becomes very important. If you're a broadcaster or a content owner, it can be less important. But we're seeing requirements as low as we sign a contract and we want to be in market in 2 months' time, which is a huge challenge. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And it's something that we've really been working very hard on to make sure we can do. And lastly, data and analytics. It's a really interesting one because you want to be able to understand your consumer base to actually monetize them better, to understand how they fit within your ecosystem, how you can address them better, what content you should be providing to them, use this data to negotiate better content rights. So there's some really interesting things that can be done there that I'll touch on later. It's a very, very interesting topic, and heard it very loud and clear at the various events and the various customers that we talked to. Data and analytics, absolutely critical to their success. So how do we help build this up? We have a solution called MediaKind Engage, which isn't a blank solution. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build up the ecosystem over the next 10 minutes or so you can see how we can bring this kind of solution to market. So we start off with your live content, your video on demand content. This is what you're bringing into the ecosystem. It's your content that you want to get out there to your consumers. We then need to get it into the platform. And the platform that we're offering is cloud-based. And we are working with Azure, we're working with Google, and we're working with AWS. So we're working with all three of the big cloud vendors in this space to make sure that we're offering a cloud solution that best suits our customers. So we can see there's a few features here, the contribution encoding, which is an area that MediaKind does a lot of work in, but also potentially you need to have your live editing and production. Now, this could be something that you already own. Many broadcasters already have this. Or if you need something, we can work with the likes of Everett's, who are one of our partners, who offer this, again, as a cloud-based solution to bring this in. So once you've got your video into the cloud, what do you then do with it? Well, you want to get it out to your end consumer. So this is a key MediaKind component when it comes to streaming. To start off with, if you're doing a live channel, you will probably need to do scheduling and playout. Again, if that's a component that you already have, most broadcasters already do. You can utilize what you already have, or you can use a service such as one from BC Next, a partner of ours, which is pre-integrated, ready to go to do your playout and scheduling. We handle your encoding, your packaging encryption, and that's for live and video on demand. And we also handle the storage, live to video on demand functionality. All of that is covered as part of our solution with the best possible video quality at the lowest bit rate. And Luke's going to talk a little bit more about that later on. This is actually something that we're doing with a number of very well-known organizations already. We're running proof of concepts with DAZN, the very large sports streaming service at the moment, and we'll be going commercially live with them in 2023. And yeah, this is kind of one of our core features and functionality. So it's what we do very, very well established with services that are designed to run in the cloud. Now, where this is very advantageous, this goes on to the scalability point we were talking earlier. If you want to run a 24/7 channel, we can get you up and running very quickly. If you then want to add events, for example, football matches, sports events, cultural events are getting increasingly popular with the broadcasters we're talking with, maybe music festivals, something to differentiate you in a very crowded market. We can spin up a live channel within a few minutes, get that up and running. You can stream your event, and when it's done, you turn it back off. So you're only paying for the cloud capacity that you need, and therefore only having costs when the event is streaming. So this is a really, really cost-effective and efficient way to do event streaming, whether it be sports, cultural, whatever interests you. And this is something which is really, really interesting for our customers. Also included within this is regionalization of content and targeted advertising. So what do I mean by regionalization? So I'll use the UK as an example. Within the UK, we have many different regions, and we have regional news channels. And even looking at it from a global perspective, you now have many global services who might want to regionalize their content. What this means is if you want to, say, stream to 8 different countries globally, and have different programming available in different regions, rather than streaming 8 different times, you stream once and you use our technology to regionalize it on a country-by-country basis, which makes it far more efficient for you. This could be potentially very interesting. If you have, obviously a very, very big expat community from Turkey around the world, if you wanted to offer Turkish content globally to address the expat community around the world, that could be something very, very useful for you. If you want to tweak, for example, content for people in the UK versus people in Germany. Targeted advertising, very, very important when it comes to monetization. We're seeing a lot of free ad supported channels now, or video on demand services that are supported by pre-roll and mid-roll adverts. And this is something I'm sure we've heard about Netflix launching their ad supported tier, something that, even as recently as 2 years ago, they were adamant. They were saying we will never have adverts on our platform. And then commercial pressures start to come in, and within 3 months, they've launched an ad-supported tier, which was very, very important for their future success. We are able to do live ad replacement on linear channels or linear ad insertion, and pre-roll, mid-roll, post-roll advertising insertion on video on demand. You control the ad decision server. If you ask us, we will bring one in, but normally most of our customers have already got an agreement in place with Smart Ad Server or Google or Freewheel or Xandr from Microsoft. If you have that existing agreement in place, we are pre-integrated with these solutions, and we are able to work with them so that you have ownership of the relationship with your ad decision server, which is super important for many of our customers. So that's the streaming side. That's the content to the consumer. What about the overall experience? What about what people actually see? Well, there's sort of a variety of functions here that you need for a successful solution. I won't touch on all of these today, but I'll touch on a few of the very important ones. We start off with identity and access management. So what do I mean by that? Well, the ability to log in at a very, very simple level. You need to be able to log in with a username and password. We work with a number of very well-known vendors in this space, such as Evergent and Clean. and we have open APIs that allow us to integrate with other third parties too, if there's a local vendor that you'd really like us to work with. Once the consumer has access to the platform, it's also then a case of making sure that they only have access to the content they are entitled to. This means that you can then have different offers. Again, very, very similar to what the likes of Netflix and Disney are offering. It could be that as a basic service, people only get video on demand and they pay more for live content. Or it could be that the free ad-supported tier is HD only, and you pay more, you have an extra subscription payment for access to UHD content. We have an incredibly powerful entitlements engine behind this, which enables these kind of use cases and ensures that they are enforced. And this is really, really important from a content security perspective. Whether it's your content or third-party content that's being licensed, you want to make sure, to the best of your ability, that it's not being pirated, that it's not being stolen. So we combine this entitlements solution with a multi-DRM solution that supports Fairplay, Widevine, and PlayReady to ensure that the content is delivered in the most secure way possible. And this is a solution that's approved by the big 6 studios in the US, including Disney. Basically, if Disney approves something, you're safe for pretty much any other content owner. These guys have sort of the strictest rules when it comes to content. So approved by Disney, generally that means you're very, very safe with any other content vendor, which is obviously very, very important. So we've talked about having these offers. You then want to make sure that you can manage the offers, you can customize them, you can push them out to your consumers. And again, this is where we bring in third parties. As I mentioned, we work with Evergent and Clean already today, and there's other solutions out there in the market that we can work with too. And that's really to allow you to have your customer-facing experience where people can buy those additional tiers, they can upgrade, they can downgrade, they can get the customer care. So super important to give consumers a very nice experience there, to make things simple and easy for them to understand. I've touched on data and engagement already. This is super important. You'll see within all of these components, there's a potential for lots of data to be collected. And in fact, we do collect it. The important thing here is this is your data. You own this data. We don't own the data. It's yours. We make sure this data is collected and available to you, and you decide how it's processed, how it's handled, what use cases you'd like to enable with it. So, we do some work with it at an operational level that I'll come back to shortly to make sure your platform's running. So for example, we'd look at the encoding and audio-visual data to make sure the streams are working okay. But then if you then want to start looking at things like offer management, customer retention, user experience, there's many tools out there, whether you want to build your own Grafana dashboards or whether you want to work with third parties who are experts in this area, or maybe build something yourself in-house, you get to choose how this data is analyzed and handled, which is super important for many of our customers, because if we look at what happens in the market, very often services want to actually have you not own this data. They want to control it because they want to monetize it themselves. That's not what we do. Your data, you own it, you choose how it gets monetized. And actually, as I mentioned, this data does feed into our telemetry and operations. We have a global service center, which is managed out of Bangalore in India, where we provide 24/7, 365 support. We're responsible for making sure that your platform is always up and running, is always running to the best of its possible capabilities. So we're handling the difficulty there as well of making sure that everything's up and running. So ideally, if there is a problem, and I think we have to be realistic here, anyone who tells you there's never any problems with their platform is frankly lying, because these are very complicated ecosystems. It's not a case of saying that you don't have problems, it's how you handle these problems when they occur. And actually, it's something we're super proud of. We launched with a very large American sports league recently, the NBA, who recently launched their League Pass service for the 2022-2023 service. And they're the only major sports league in the US who's launched in the last year who's not had significant problems or outages as part of their launch process. And part of that has been down to the work that obviously we've done with them to prepare things, to make sure it scales, but also because we can preemptively spot when there's a problem about to occur and fix it before it becomes customer facing. So from there, you're putting all of this data out across CDNs. Again, this is not a feature that we provide. We do a lot of work with Akamai today, along with other global CDNs. And we're also having some very interesting conversations at the moment with media-specific CDNs as well, who maybe could be more relevant for distribution of media content. So what does the consumer then see on their device? We as MediaKind are not experts in user experiences. What we do provide is a set of very well documented APIs and a player SDK that allows third parties to build applications. And we're currently working with 2 companies to build white label applications that if our customers want to take those white label applications, customize them, brand them up as their own, that offers them a very, very fast and cost-effective time to market. Equally, for some of our customers, some of our larger customers, they want to take those same APIs and SDK and build their own end user experience. And in fact, this is what the NBA did in conjunction with Microsoft, who were the system integrator prime on the project. They actually took that and they've built their own completely custom user experience. But they're a tier 1 sports league, so they have the money and the capabilities to do that. So depending on what you'd like to do, if you're maybe a relatively small organization, you can take the white label applications and have cost efficiency and time to market. If you're a larger organization, you can take it and either have yourself or a local organization build the end experience for yourself, or possibly both. You start off with white label, and as you get more subscribers, as you evolve, as you start to understand the market better, you can then migrate to something more customized and personal in the future. So what does this leave us with? Well, this leaves us with the cloud elasticity, so the cloud scaling that we can offer as part of this solution to give you the cost efficiency of the scaling, to allow you to start small and grow without significant upfront costs. All the ability to deal with those very big peak loads, maybe on a Saturday night when there's more people watching, or on a Sunday afternoon when there's more games on. We're bringing the quality of experience for streaming that's traditionally associated with broadcast TV into the OTT space in terms of the reliability of the streaming and the picture quality. We're bringing the flexible entitlements to allow the maximum revenue, so you can have different subscription options, but also enforcing the entitlements to make sure that people are actually paying for your content. We're offering you a pre-integrated solution with best-of-breed components from third parties where needed as part of the overall ecosystem. And then lastly, really just to hammer this home, because it's so super important for so many of our customers, you own your customer data. You decide how it's processed. Thank you very much. I think I'm a few minutes over time, but I think we've got maybe 5 minutes or so for any questions that have been asked.
Paul, I have a question about I think you are giving service to content providers. Mm-hmm. You mentioned about 10,000, 50,000 subscribers. There are many YouTubers, content creators. Is it possible for them to build a system like this?
So generally, I think YouTubers themselves, as in sort of social media stars, are generally best within that ecosystem because it allows them to monetize and get the reach that they need to be successful. What we are seeing, though, is many content owners, sort of traditional content owners or sports leagues, who've maybe started out on YouTube because it's a very, very easy way for them to monetize their content, who then realize that maybe it's not giving them the best monetization options they can because they're basically limited to advertising VOD. But it's also advertising VOD where Google take a significant chunk of the revenue from the advertising because they provide the platform, and it's, frankly, you don't have a huge amount of choice. You can't negotiate with Google on YouTube when it comes to advertising revenue. So people, a lot of our customers start there and then realize and go, well, wait a sec, we've got 100,000 subscribers or 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. How can we get more revenue? And they do that by taking back ownership of their content and going for a direct consumer platform where they can then offer subscription, transactional, and advertising services in order to better monetize the content.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. If there's no other questions, Editin or Paul, you want to wrap up?
I'm just going to very quickly say goodbye. I need to go to the event now. I'm talking there in an hour or so with some people. So I will say thank you very much for everyone's
Thank you, Paul, for your time.
Super appreciated, and hopefully we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you very much, Paul. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
So thank you, Paul, for that introduction to the end-to-end streaming applications and how we do that. So what I'd like to do now, Editin, if that's okay, is take the reins and move on to our second presentation,
Great.
which is...
It's over to you.
Thank you, Editin. So why does my broadcast head end need to evolve? Just to check, you can see my slides, correct?
Yes, we can see.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. So why does my head end need to evolve? So the challenges faced by broadcasters are frankly quite simple. They need to reduce their costs whilst generating more revenue. So how can we do this? So some of the key areas that we're going to be looking at is one, which is fairly obvious, which is better video compression. Video compression performance, which is something MediaKind is well versed in for 25 plus years. For a given bitrate has long been one of the key features of a broadcast head end, which is making it very important and critical for today's transmission, because essentially bandwidth equals cost. And it still remains true today, even with the latest generation technology. And it's why we still have at MediaKind a team of video compression experts that work continuously to improve our performance of our video encoder. Customers still want better video quality. The screen sizes are increasing. The depth of color and content is on the up. So we need to make sure that we have the right set of tools to address those challenges with our customers. Operational efficiency is also important. So how much does it cost essentially to operate and maintain the system? Is the solution future-proofed, and can it evolve as technology and standards evolve, or will it need to be replaced in its entirety? And also, with not just the software, but we need to look at the hardware itself that it's running on. Does it need to be replaced? Can it be repaired? And how quickly and how easily can that be achieved on premise, or will a cloud compute solution help? We also need to look at new business models as well. So is there an alternative to the traditional 5-year large CapEx investments in new systems? Or maybe would a subscription or a pay-per-use system be more of a amenable way to do business? But one of the obvious ways to generate more money is to launch new services. Of course, new services attract new subscribers and new content. And usually you can offer these at a premium. So UHD channels being an obvious one can be sold to premium customers to attract new people to the platform. Or it could be these channels may be just there to cover large events or to give you a USP against your competitors when you broadcast major events like the Olympics. But streaming as well as broadcasting is another way to increase the audience, and it really opens up the possibilities of increasing the advertising revenue and what money can be generated from that as well. So on the streaming side, we're looking at some of the challenges that current customers Could be broadcasters that are looking at streaming, or they could even be streaming and OTT customers today. But streaming is essentially designed to resolve 4 major challenges that customers see on the market today. Today, OTT, the experience is not the same as broadcast. I think we can all agree that, when you're watching Netflix or one of your, non-linear channels, the experience is second to none. It's fantastic. But when you want to watch live video, and you're watching a football match, or there's an important event that's happening, the experience with streaming versus broadcast in the set-top box in the home, it's very different. So this is a challenge. Competition is very high. So moreover, with many newcomers to the market, customers need a faster time to deploy and a faster time to enable new content for their customers. And they also need new differentiators. So what new features can they bring ahead of their competition? And for telcos, so telcos and cable and IPTV operators, OTT is a must. It's seen to be a premium service that they must be offering, but they need to rationalize their operations through convergence. We can't have a segregated broadcast and IT team running media operations. We need convergence to streamline costs. We also need to find ways to limit churn and to protect and monetize the content. So they expect new ways to monetize content through advertising, or alternatively, they need to ensure that the content that they're acquiring from their content owners is protected and secured correctly. So how does MediaKind respond to these challenges? So we have a solution called Aquila Live. So Aquila Live is the latest solution from MediaKind for compression headends. As mentioned before, it's built on 25 years plus heritage in video compression. Not only provides the latest in video compression performance across all the major codecs, but it also supports some of the latest formats such as UHD and HDR. So it enables broadcasters to transition to an all IP architecture, which in turn enables the solution to be deployed perhaps in a private or a public cloud instance. But we don't force customers to do this immediately and in one go. There is an evolution in place. So some of the topics I'll discuss in the next few slides, you'll see references to products you may already know or products that we've used in the past, and how we evolve those systems to get customers onto the next generation headends. So the main products that I'm showing on the screen is from our Aquila Live portfolio. So we have Encoding Live, which is our linear encoder. This can be used for broadcast or it can be used for streaming. We have our Encoding on Demand, which is our non-linear encoder. So for all the VOD applications, we have a non-file based encoder for that. We have a Packager, which is our linear segmentation and wrapping packaging device. We have our Stream Processor, which is essentially our new software multiplexer, so for broadcast DTH applications. And then we have a new controller interface, which is a web-based API-driven GUI that controls and operates and maintains all of the products on the screen. And for some of our customers joining today, you may be familiar with a product called Encompass, which is still providing us today with a full managed management and control platform for all the devices. And we categorize them into 3 main areas of solutions, either streaming, broadcast, or on demand. So I'm just going to talk a little bit now about how we deploy such solutions. So do I deploy in my traditional way as I've previously done before? And the answer is no, not necessarily. So there's a lot more options available today to customers on how to deploy solutions into new environments. Traditionally, it's always been appliance-based with hardware, traditionally in a rack, in a room, which is running 24/7, and in 3 to 5 years would need replacing. But with the adoption of new technology and also the speed at which we adopt new software, new hardware, new infrastructure is required a lot quicker than in the past, where we typically have had some systems running 10+ years, which is testament to their reliability, but not necessarily great for a customer who's trying to expand and evolve their solution and their customer offering. So today, MediaKind offers 2 main deployment types. We offer a software-only solution, which can be deployed on a MediaKind appliance. So if you're not comfortable with the cloud option or do not have relations or ability to launch in a data center, we can still provide you with a full full solution with appliances and software, so a hardware-software mix. And we do this for our streaming, broadcast, or video on demand solutions. Or if the customer now wants to provide their own server, so they have a relationship with one of the major COTS vendors, then we can also integrate and deploy our software onto these solutions. And then we have our cloud native or as a service solution. So if customers are not concerned with the underlying infrastructure, or perhaps they want to remove themselves of the burden which carries the life cycle of hardware or infrastructure, we can opt for a cloud native solution. So MediaKind can provide you with all the tools in our MCA, our managed cloud application deployment, so that you can launch your services. You have a login portal to the software, so you do all the operations day to day, and MediaKind provide the infrastructure, the cloud setup, and also manage the cloud and lifecycle in the background for you. So we take that stress away so that you don't need to be managing that infrastructure as well. Or perhaps you want an as a service solution. So you want to take away all of the operational complexity from yourself, and you want us to manage and operate the platform for you. As Paul mentioned in his other slide, we do have a 24/7 service center running out of India, which runs many customers around the globe and some in this region. And they're leveraging off of us doing the operations for them so that they can concentrate on other responsibilities within their network. So just to give you a bit of an example of what that would look like. So the diagram showing here is a typical appliance-based deployment. So at a high level, this looks almost identical to previous generations of broadcast headends. So for example, our previous generation, like the AVP 4000, the MX84, this would be a very traditional broadcast appliance-based setup. And note that the control system is still our Encompass control, which has for many years become one of the most prominent control and monitoring platforms in the business. So I think this just goes to show how the Aquila Live can provide a low-risk upgrade path to broadcasters. So for example, if you want to retain that familiarity of Encompass control, you can replace some of the aging hardware-centric encoders with some of our new Aquila Live encoders, and you can still integrate that into Encompass and that environment. So we don't need to swap out all the SDI routing, the IP switching, even the multiplexing. We could just perhaps upgrade the encoders first, just to give you access to better compression, better quality, and new features to go to launch like UHD with your new customers. In contrast, the diagram here shows an example of how Aquila Live can be deployed in a cloud environment. So quite a different diagram setup, but essentially the components in this deployment are deployed as Docker containers with Kubernetes, managing the deployment of the containers. So this has been specifically designed to be cloud provider agnostic, so it will work with any cloud provider. But as I mentioned, if you opt for the MediaKind Managed Cloud application, the MCA model, we take all of this stress and burden away from you. So we just give you access to the software interface, the login portal. Essentially, it would feel like you're logging into the encoder that's sitting in your rack. The difference being it's in an instance in a cloud vendor's account, in a different location. But essentially, all the operations, the day-to-day control and management would still come from you as the customer. So let's look a little bit about some of the technology underlying this equipment. So first, let's look at picture quality. So as I mentioned at the beginning, video compression performance directly equates to broadcast transmission costs. So whether that be the amount of RF bandwidth required for a terrestrial transmission or satellite DTH transponder, that needs to be leased. Essentially, if we can better the compression, we can lower the bandwidth, we can save money. So this is very important. And this has been a point that we've been coming back to many, many years, because even with MPEG-2 and some of the latest technologies such as HEVC, we're still achieving a reduction in bandwidth to give you better quality and reduce cost. But this is also quite relevant. So for example, if you've already leased your transponder space, the contract's already been renewed, but you want to reduce your bandwidth, Perhaps switching to the new technology will alleviate some of that bandwidth on your existing channel lineup, but then you will offer up space to launch new services such as a UHD channel, but without having to lease any more transponder space. So this is one of the main drivers to do that. But if we look on the streaming side, there's some other technologies that are quite important and inherent to making streaming a success. And one of these topics is latency. So streaming has historically offered quite an inferior experience compared to broadcast quality. I think that was clear in the beginning when we discussed how I would consume a live sports channel through my iPad versus through my set-top box. And of course, I'm sure many of you have been in the situation where you're watching, and actually quite more recently, the World Cup happening in Qatar. You know, if there's a goal scored in one room, maybe it's coming from the set-top box, but then you hear it on the iPad 30 seconds later. It can become quite annoying. So we need ways in which we can overcome this. So one of the main focus areas for us and the industry is about providing that broadcast level quality of experience to the OTT platform. So MediaKind's looking at technologies, and we've got tried and tested technologies that we've support and integrate into our Aquila Live solution, one of which is our CMAF, so our Common Media Application Format. And essentially, this is the standard that is transforming how, you know, the two leading output formats such as HLS and Dash are supporting a route to reducing latency. And in the diagram you can see here, this is just a traditional OTT workflow from ingest to output. And there's three main areas we can help and look to reduce the latency. The first is what we call direct path. So this is the direct path between the encoder and the packager. So this is essentially reducing the latency and look ahead on the encoding and the packaging, which can easily be done with upgrading or adding in the OTT encoders from new. There's also areas within the chain in the packager and at the CDN to reduce the latency. So we're looking at CMAF and HLS support for that. And then there's also elements of the player which we can use to reduce the overall latency as well. We have tested and integrated different players that are being used in the OTT market. And if you have all three of these lined up, you're well on your way to reducing latency to having a broadcast quality of experience with your OTT. And just on some of the future developments and some of the future technologies we're looking at. So video quality, bandwidth usage, and video quality operations are probably the main discussions most customers are having today. And MediaKind is doing quite a lot in these three areas so to become, you know, better at what we do in compression, but also looking at the future on how we can optimize the amount of channels that we're processing daily. And we've come up with a few different technologies, one of which is an artificial intelligence technology, which is called ACT. So it's artificial coding technology. And essentially what this does, it analyzes the video input. So it allows us to gather information and detail about the source and its characteristics, and essentially use that and manipulate that so that we can provide a better performing encoder. And also with machine learning, we can actually develop and enhance that on every frame of video that we're sending through the encoder. So a little bit different to what we've done in the past, but essentially this is trying to make the encoding more efficient and at the same time providing still the high quality output and using the bandwidth in the right places to represent the content the best. We're also working with and on next generation codecs, such as you may have heard of VVC, so versatile video coding. There's also EVC, and also we're closely monitoring the developments with AV1. And essentially, this is to future-proof our solutions so that customers can always come out on top with best video quality and support for later codecs. Traditionally, in a broadcast head end, you were always restricted by the format support in the set-top box. So even the transition from MPEG-2 to MPEG-4 was a big transition. And even now, I'd say predominantly most of the channels are still MPEG-2. But that transition was a lot slower because of the adoption of the technology in the set-tops and also the deployment of the set-top boxes. But in streaming, it's completely different. You can upgrade an iPhone, an iPad very quickly overnight to support these types of technologies. Therefore, in your head end, you can then optimize, use these technologies to save cost and deliver better quality video to your customers. And one of the other ways which we're doing that is with CVQ. So this stands for constant video coding. And this ensures that all the bandwidth used is adding value to the end user. So if you think about StatMux for OTT, it's a little bit like that. This is the best way I can explain. But essentially, bandwidth is a cost for our customers. We can't waste it. And also, any bandwidth you're wasting from the head end, you're going to be charged from the CDN provider that bandwidth regardless. So we need to optimize the bandwidth that's leaving the encoder going into the CDN so that it's very cost efficient and a high quality output for your customers. So I think looking to the future, it's clear a change will benefit both the broadcasters and the streamers. And with MediaKind, you can see from our plethora of products in our suite, there's an evolution at any stage of customers' journeys to upgrade them. I think for me in particular, and being part of the Turkish market and working here for quite some time, we have many broadcasters with many solutions which are quite hardware-centric, hardware-based. And hopefully you can see now we have some cutting-edge solutions, software-based, that we can slowly evolve and benefit updates to customers by using this technology. So thank you all for listening. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I hope I've left some time for questions as well.
Look, I have a question again.
Sure,
I know that you are young, but your experience is so long. Can you tell the last 20 years of this encoder business? Because I remember that there were 10 new big NDS or DMV or Thunberg, and here you can encode with very small or nothing software. Tell us about this story.
Sure. So first of all, you're very kind to say I'm young. I don't feel so young. I have 2 children now, so it makes me look less young. But you're absolutely right. I was very fortunate to start the journey back in 2008. And I was actually from the Thunberg television acquisition that Ericsson did. And the best thing for me was seeing what we did and, the hardware-centric encoders we used to sell. If you remember, they were like 12U in size for 1 channel. So even the shift of the number of channels per RU has changed dramatically. But the journey from Thunberg to where we are now has been formidable, and Ericsson along the way. And all the acquisitions they did, they had this vision of incorporating the best of the best. And it began with Thunberg. We acquired Invivio, Fabrics, Microsoft Media Room to provide this media hub of all the technology that we believe would be used today. And Ericsson were particularly interested in that because they were obviously at the top of their game with their radio networks like 5G. And they quickly came to the realization that 90% of the traffic on their networks will be video. So how do we optimize that type of transition and that delivery? And it's been a relationship that's lasted and gone very well. But moving forward, I'm particularly excited to see where MediaKind is heading. We've got new products that are coming into the market that are going to address some of these key cloud requirements. As you can see, we've transitioned from a hardware to a software-based company now. We do not develop hardware products predominantly, it's software now. And, we're partnering with many of the cloud vendors like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google to deliver these experiences to customers. And we're already seeing this now. And as Paul mentioned, we've struck deals with some of the key content owners in the world. We're looking at people like the NBA, DAZN. These are traditional customers that we never would have had access to, but now we are delivering these solutions end to end. These are the types of customers that are looking to us to provide those solutions. But as you can see from the portfolio, there's a good level of scale. If it's traditional broadcast, we have solutions. If it's streaming, there's a solution. Or if you want everything managed end to end, we have a solution for that as well. So I look forward to seeing what the next 20 years provides and has in store for us.
Thank you for your answer. One more question. This broadcast will be rebroadcast in YouTube or YouTube channel. Maybe some students, future video related people will watch it. Do you have any advice to these students about which skills they have to improve to get a job in this area?
It's a really good question. And I found myself in that situation when I was at university. And I actually recalled what I was learning at university to what I learn now. And it is completely different. My advice is to keep learning. We are in a technology industry. You need to be relevant. You need to be up to date. And I've never found it more important than self-learning. One, because it stays with you, regardless which company you're in, which industry you go to. It's something for yourself. It evolves yourself. And I train myself constantly, looking at all the new technologies that are being provided. So I think to keep your sights open, you don't want to be pigeonholed in one particular technology, because by the time you've mastered it, the technology has evolved. So you need to keep moving. And I think that's been one of the key reasons to success for what we do in this industry. It's constantly evolving and learning and training yourself for tomorrow.
One last question. I'm very interested in EdTech education, and videos are teachers are using videos to teach their students. Mm-hmm. Do you think this area will increase?
Definitely, and actually, I read a report recently from Amazon, and they're looking at edge startup and small, medium-sized business startups, and what that brings. And one of the focus areas for them is education, military, government, hospitality, all these areas that are now, big, not just due to COVID with a lockdown of people doing a lot more remote and online, but it was something that was waiting to happen. And I think people have seen how convenient it is. And even today, we're doing a live webinar all remotely. The technology speaks for itself, and it allows you to do this. And I think the education sector has become accustomed to this way of working, very different to probably how you and me were in the classroom, where we had to sit in front of our lecturers. But now it's in front of computers, and the content that is being provided on these video platforms is so important. And I see, even my children and the way they consume content, it's very different to how I did back then, even from, entertainment to education. So it needs to constantly evolve, and we need to be very aware of how we utilize that to our benefit. There's lots of good and bad things that can come with technology, but I always focus on the value that it brings to people, because I think essentially that will always naturally come through.
Thank you, Luke, for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Wonderful tech days. Both Paul and you gave wonderful insights to our audience and myself. Değerli katılımcılar, çok güzel bir webinarı geride bıraktık. Bu webinarımızda MediaKind konuğumuzdu. Video streaming üzerine ve bunun yazılım üzerine dönmesiyle ilgili bazı konulara değindiler. Bir dahaki webinarda görüşmek üzere. Çok teşekkürler.
Teşekkürler.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.